And then we're delighted to be joined by Dr. Hamad Al-Draye, board-certified neurologist and a global shaper here in Riyadh. So with that, I'd love to start with Hamad, if I may. As a board-certified neurologist, could you give us a briefing on a little bit more about how mental health and the brain interact with each other to ground our conversation today?
Of course. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. So first, if the question is, what's the state of mental health? I can tell you that 20% of the youth had an element of anxiety in their lives. 30% of youth had an element of depression in their lives. And about 40% of youth should or would have an element of mental wellness issues or struggles at one moment of their lives. But if we shift this question to a different spectrum and we ask, what's the state of well-being? I can tell you that 60% of the youth don't really have an enjoyable workplace. 80% of the youth are not sufficiently physically active. 70% of youth are having sleeping problems. 60% of youth are struggling financially. So that just gives you the context that well-being is not a given, but it's something that we should work on, we should develop in our lives, and we should create with our habits. Now, since everything we react to is basically a perception of our minds and our brain structures, and as a neurologist, I'll give you some fun facts of my favorite organ. So we have three vital structures in the brain that are related to well-being, and I'll try to keep it very short and straight to the point, but we have the center for judgment and decision, and that's the prefrontal cortex, where we decide what is the best solution. And then we have the amygdala, which is the center that decides our emotions. It makes us happy, makes us sad, makes us angry, and whatnot. So it modulates our emotion. And then we have the third structure, which is the hippocampus, and it's responsible for storage of memory. So all our experiences that we have in life, it turns into memories, and we use that as a resource. Now, when all these structures are working together, we have balance, and once we're balanced, we have a proper mental wellness. We're able to take action whenever things are affecting us. But when there's an imbalance, let's say the prefrontal cortex is not giving you the right judgment, you can't judge how happy or how sad you should be. And if you don't have enough experience, you don't have a storage of memory, so you really can use the hippocampus to guide the amygdala of how happy or what kind of emotion you should have at this specific situation. So again, from a neurological point of view and from a lifestyle point of view, well-being is not a given. We need to create our own well-beings by doing our habits, routines that creates the right well-being for ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great way of framing this. So we need to create and invest in our own mental well-being to make sure that that is a reality.
Exactly.
We often talk about promoting good mental health as that active investment in good practices, but also reaching out for help when maybe we're struggling to get the help that we need. Hamad, I might come to you now. As we think about collaboration in the region, there are a number of solutions I know you've been thinking about and involved with. Where do you see greater need for collaboration?
Okay, so I'd like to actually collaborate with the audience and everyone online. But first, I'm just going to say a quick story. So there was this one lady who works in a very big company. She was tasked to do a presentation. She spent all yesterday preparing for the presentation, and she was very excited. She got into the meeting room, and not just 5 minutes into the presentation, her boss gets up, says, "You are clearly unprepared. This is a waste of time. Please call for another meeting if you're ready," and just storms out. So of course she was in shock. She stayed in the room, frozen, until one of her colleagues went in and saw her and saw the scene that happened. And her colleague said, "Well, of course this happened. You're a disorganized person who does not prioritize the work, and you procrastinate." So that's a shock for a colleague to say something like that. But what if I told you that that was something that she told herself? In actuality, we have something called negative narrative. We have a bad self-talk to ourselves. And without pointing fingers, I'm sure everyone had that moment. We did something bad and, oh, we deserve to feel bad. So when it comes to the brain, it's very difficult to convince our brains otherwise. And when we're in this situation, we're feeling weak, we're struggling, or if we see someone struggling, I like to collaborate again with you to do something called emotional first aid, something to help yourselves and something to help others. So in order to have a very strong health well-being status, we need to look at health well-being pillars. So number one would be physical. Am I having a fit body that is, I'm treating it well? Second, it's motivation. Am I motivated? Am I hopeful? Am I making plans for the future? Third is intellect. Am I stimulating my brain? Am I with the right people? Am I interested in what's happening in the world? Fourth is spiritual. Am I having a purpose in life? Is there a purpose in what I'm doing? I have to feel something to get out of bed in the morning. And the fifth is social connection. And social connection is defined as your relationships that you have with others, that you meet regularly, and you invest your time and effort with them. And I'll stop at social connection because it's one of the most important parts. And a research was done in Harvard, and one of the longest studies in the world, 85 years of research data, showed that those who have positive social connections and relationships are those who live longer, happier lives, and healthier lives. And finally, of course, we must have emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is basically helping yourself and others to develop the strategies that helps you in your dark days. Because in the dark days, you're weak, you can't really think, you can't really work with anything. You just need to activate a plan. And that plan needs to be prepared firsthand. So be an advocate of emotional first aid. We can't all be clinicians. We can't always be expert people. But we can learn to be strong in emotional first aid to help ourselves and to help others if we see any of these 6 pillars of health and well-being imbalanced.
That's a brilliant thing for us all to take away, to be able to take action here today, if you haven't already. So emotional first aid.
Yes.
Another area I just wanted to spend a little time on is the workplace. So within the workforce, we know mental health is becoming more and more important, including in this region. What are some solutions you're seeing that are working in the workforce? And again, how can we come back to that question of how can we continue to foster collaboration there?
Sure. I won't spend so much time in the workforce. Yeah. The workforce for me is something that's very close to my heart because most of the youth, they really have issues with mental wellness in their workforce. And a statistic that is actually surprising for me, 83 of organizations and companies have mental well-being and wellness departments. However, 81% of employees usually say that they're not really benefiting or they're not emotionally well in organizations. So there's clearly a disconnect. Something's not working. So when it comes to the workforce, and I'm speaking to organizations and companies, there's the 3 killers of economy. You have burnout, absenteeism, and presenteeism, and Dr. Mansour spoke about it briefly. I'll just say that burnout is basically when you're emotionally, physically, and emotionally completely stressed out. And that costs the economy millions of lost hours and lost dollars into the economy. Absenteeism is when you really cannot show up to work because of the stressors. And that also costs the economy. And then finally, presenteeism, which is mostly the biggest problem, is when people are there, but not really there. The emotions, the stressors are carried throughout, and they really can't be efficient. Do I have a solution? Do I have an answer? No, but I have a question that I'd like everyone to start thinking. How can we solve for an invisible condition? I really can't see my friend who's going through something that is invisible. I can't really support them. But if the other colleague is having a headache, I can clearly see it. I can see the physical characteristics, and I can reliably give them time off. The only solution that I think is beneficial is whenever you're feeling the overwhelming load of work, take a step back, stand up, and walk. The moment you walk away from work, you disassociate yourself from all the triggers and stimuli that are usually associated with the overwhelming sensation of the work. And when you take a walk, and subhanAllah, the brain really resets with movement. That's why we always encourage physical activity. And the movement you do walking around your office department and coming back helps you reset your mind, decrease the stressors and triggers that you're having, and come back with a more clear mind. And that's something I hope everyone can start to do at work. And maybe we can have a bigger discussion and dialogue about how we can solve for the invisible condition and please start having that dialogue with your employer, because this disconnect that we're having is a big problem. And as I usually like to say, work has to work for you.
I also have another.
So with that, we've had a fascinating discussion. We'd love to open this up to the audience. For any questions, please direct your questions to the panelists. And if you could keep it to a question, we don't have too much time, rather than comment, that would be fabulous. Yes. Would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Hello everyone, my name is Hamad Al-Draye. I'm an aspiring researcher and I'm particularly interested in using video games to assess mental health. I've done some research, minor, since I was in high school at the time. The problem has been raised. There is not enough social workers out there to give help. And we can see that, especially in adolescence age, there is a reluctance towards going to a therapist and to getting help because of the cost and the social stigma. So using video games is a solution when you ask what other solutions can we have. And Labbe, I've been watching your work and I'm admiring everything that you do. So I wanted to just point that out. So the problem is today, where do we stand ethically when we say using AI, not particularly in video games, but in the field of mental health? I've heard from a lot of experts that even if it's accurate to 99.9%, there's always that 0.01% that will make an issue for us to use AI in mental health. I would love to hear from you experts about this issue.
I'll just have a brief answer and then to you, Dr. Hamad. To you, Dr. Hamad, if you have anything.
I agree that the point here is that when you put the machine, you remove the human. And we as humans are social beings. We need to communicate and we can connect. Real quickly, there are new advancements. I would call them more emerging technologies rather than artificial intelligence. You can use VR to actually put yourself in a state that is controlled and operated by a therapist to give you let's say, a journey where you can really get to know yourself, your feelings, and how you can slowly manage that. It works beautifully with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and there are solutions. There's also gamifications and gaming where you can play a game and the whole environment is gearing you towards, let's say, instead of leveling up and becoming stronger, it's telling you to solve for the issues that usually youth have. And I'm just going to give a quick point. It's up to people like you who are very fascinated moving forward with the research to bring that here and make it local, because it exists globally. It just needs someone with your mindset and your energy to make a change in people's lives today.
Let's talk after this session.
Yeah.
Maybe time for just 2 more questions we'll take and we'll answer. I know we have a couple of minutes, so we can keep it quick. Thank you.
My question is for the global shapers within the panel, Rawan and Hamad. What do you think the role of youth is when it comes to breaking the stigma around mental health?
I'll yield
Great
to
question.
Rawan.
Thank you for that question. And I'll take that back to Dr. Hamad to let him continue.
I'll be real quick for the time, but number one, build it, they will come. If I have a neighborhood that I want them to become more, let's say, active, I can do a lot of initiatives to make them run, cycle, whatever. But if I build a park in that neighborhood, they'll inherently start to become more active. So build the environments and the safe spaces. Second, the best way to change and manage population health is with communication. So we have the youth voice to share and destigmatize mental health struggles through our networks and our capacity. And finally, we are able to mobilize stakeholders. There's a lot of very important people, whether in technology, whether in policy, whether in psychology or clinical setting, that can be very supportive in fixing at least things at our capacity as youth. So these would be the 3 main aspects that I would focus on as a youth global shaper.
Thank you so much. And we're actually now out of time. So if you do have questions, please do come and feel free to speak to us, the panel. This is a crisis. We're seeing a need collaboration here. We've got an opportunity globally, and there's an opportunity to really lead what is needed for our world right now more than ever. And a huge thanks to our panelists for your time and all of your work. What is an incredibly important global issue for today. Thank you all for your time.